My name is Sydney. I am 11 years old, and last summer my mom went to Europe for a month and left me with a single crumpled 20 in my hand. See. You are independent now, she said with a bright smile, hauling her suitcase toward the door. You're not Ababy anymore. Just order food if you need to. Okay. Independent. That word echoed in my head long after she said it. I looked down at the wrinkled bill in my palm, $20 that suddenly felt lighter than air. There was no instruction manual, no phone. Number written on a sticky note, no neighbor's name mentioned in passing. Just a quick peck on my forehead that barely landed, the rumble of suitcase wheels on pavement, and then the click of the door shutting me inside. I stood frozen in the hallway, willing myself to believe the words I whispered into the silence. I will be fine. But even as I said it, my fingers trembled around that bill. The house felt bigger somehow, like the walls had stretched when she walked out. Nobody else was home. Nobody knew I was here. Nobody was coming to check. I tried to turn it into a game in my mind, some kind of test I could pass with flying colors. Day one begins now, I told myself. I can do this. I walked to the pantry and counted what we had. A few dented cans stacked in the corner, some boxes, with more dust than contents, and a fridge already running on fumes. I pushed down the knot of fear rising in my throat and tried to focus. If she believed I could handle this, maybe I just needed to prove it. Maybe I needed to show her what independence really looked like when you forced it on someone too young to drive, too young to have a real job, too young to know what to do when everything runs out. Because over the days that followed, that $20 bill would vanish like smoke. The food would dwindle to nothing. And the quiet of our empty house would shift into something far worse than just being alone. When my mom finally returned and stepped through that door, what she discovered inside made her face go pale. Her voice cracked when she breathed out those words. No, this cannot be happening. Want to know how being abandoned with $20 at 11 years old turned into the choice that made my mom regret every decision she ever made about me? Stay until the end and you will understand exactly how. I made certain she would carry this with her forever. The problem hit about 10 minutes after. I watched the taxi disappear down the street. My mom had left a credit card on the kitchen counter. Like it was some kind of safety net, like that one piece of plastic would solve everything. Except there was a problem I discovered the moment I tried to use it. The card had never been activated. No PIN, no way to make it work. I stood there with my phone in hand, trying app after app to order something to eat, watching each one reject the card over and over until my stomach hurt from more than just hunger. So that was my reality. Me, a broken card, and $20. To my name, the first day I made it feel like an adventure. I sliced bread paper thin, spread peanut butter so carefully that you could almost see through it, and told myself this was what real survivors did. They stretched things, they made it work. I even laughed to myself, thinking maybe this would be a funny story later, something I could tell my friends about. By the third day, the humor died completely. The pantry looked like something from a sad commercial. A couple of cans I was too scared to open because I did not want to cut myself. A cereal box that rattled with almost nothing inside. A jar of pickles I could not stand the taste of. My stomach made sounds loud enough to embarrass me even though I was the only one there to hear it. I turned on the TV to drown out the silence. Random shows played one after another, filling the room with voices that were not mine, so I did not have to listen to the house settling around me. I opened my mom's laptop and scrolled through her emails, all these messages piling up about work. Deadlines and meetings, things that mattered more to her than checking if I was okay. At some point, I grabbed a notebook from my room and wrote across the top of a blank page in letters bigger than I normally used. Evidence, under that word. I started listing things. Left alone at 11, $20, no food plan. No check-ins. Not a single call. I did not have a clear plan for what I would do with those notes. But writing them down changed something in me. If they thought I was old enough to survive on my own, then I was old enough to remember every single detail. I was old enough to document what they chose when they picked a vacation over their kid. I picked up my phone and opened the camera. Day 3, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. My reflection in the screen looked smaller than I remembered, like I had shrunk in just 72 hours. I am still alone. The card they left does not work. I ate the last real food yesterday. I stopped, swallowing hard. If anyone is watching this, it means somebody finally asked what happened to me. I saved the video and locked my phone, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Part of me hoped no one would ever need to see that recording. But another part of me, the part that was getting angrier with each empty hour, wanted that video to blow up in her face the second she walked back through the door. I thought about my best friend Emma. I hovered over her name in my contacts for a long time. If I sent her a message, I would have to admit that my mom left me here, that I was hungry, that I was not handling this at all. Instead, I typed something. That sounded normal. How is your trip going? She never replied. Maybe she was at a lake somewhere with her family, eating real meals, not even thinking about her phone. My stomach twisted into a tighter knot. By day 5, the hunger was not just a feeling anymore. It was like a fog wrapping around my brain, making it hard to think straight. I got dizzy when I stood up too fast. I found a half-empty cereal box shoved in the back of a cupboard and ate it straight from the bag, trying to make each handful last as long as possible. I opened my notebook again and added another line. Day 5, still no call from Mom. Not even a text message. Then I wrote something that made my hand shake. If I disappear, this will prove it was not my fault. That was when my thinking shifted. This was not just about making it until she came home anymore. This was about what would happen to her when people finally saw what she had done. On day 7, my body felt like it was giving up, but my anger kept me upright. I dragged myself to the front window and stared out at the street. Kids rode their bikes past our house. A dog barked at a delivery truck. A couple walked by holding coffee cups like it was just another beautiful day. Normal lives. Normal parents who did not abandon their children. I looked at our empty driveway and whispered to the glass, "You chose Europe over me. Do you have any idea what that is going to cost you when someone figures this out?" Like the universe heard me, the doorbell rang. I froze where I stood, cereal crumbs still stuck to my fingers. Nobody ever rang our doorbell. Neighbor kids just knocked. Delivery people just dropped packages and left. The bell rang again, followed by 3 sharp knocks that echoed through the empty house. My heart slammed against my ribs as I moved toward the door. For a second, I thought about staying quiet, pretending nobody was home. If it was just someone selling something, they would eventually leave. But another thought cut through my fear. Like a knife. What if this is the moment someone actually sees me? My hand shaking, I reached for the door handle. If you were 11 years old, starving and completely alone, would you open that door? Or would you keep pretending everything was fine? I cracked the door open just wide enough to see who was standing. There, a man in a green jacket stood on the porch, and it took me a second to recognize him without a classroom behind him. My school's emblem was stitched on his chest. "Hi, Sydney," he said gently. It was Mr. Hughes, the counselor from school. "I have been trying to reach your parents, but they are not answering. Can I come in for a moment?" Every instinct I had screamed at me to lie, to say everything was perfectly fine, that my parents were just out running errands, that I did not need anything from anyone. But my grip on the door loosened. I stepped back. "Sure," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I meant it to. "I guess." He stepped inside, and immediately his eyes started moving around the room. The silence in the house suddenly felt heavier than before, like it had weight. The dishes piled in the sink, the bare counters, the fruit bowl with nothing in it. All of it became evidence I had not meant to display but had left out in the open anyway. "Are your parents at work?" he asked, clearly expecting someone to walk into the room at any second. "They are in Europe," I said, surprised by how flat and emotionless my voice sounded. "For a month?" His eyebrows shot up like I had just said something. "Impossible, a month? And who is staying with you here?" I swallowed hard. This was the line. The exact moment where I could choose to protect them or choose to tell the truth. My fingers curled tighter around the fabric of my shirt. Just me, I admitted. They said I was old enough. Something in his expression changed instantly, like a switch flipping from concern to alarm. He pulled out a chair and sat down at our kitchen table, motioning for me to sit across from him. "Sydney, how long have you been alone here?" "A week," I whispered. "Almost a full week." "Do you have enough food? Enough money?" I let out a small laugh that sounded bitter and unfamiliar coming from my own mouth. "They left me a credit card that does not work and $20. He stared at me for a long moment. It was not the way teachers look at you when you forget your homework. It was something much heavier, like he was trying to count every single way this situation was wrong. "This is not okay," he said finally, his voice low and serious. "You know that, right?" I shrugged even though my chest ached. They said they needed a break. That I am mature. That I should be able to handle this on my own. "And how have you been handling it?" I wanted to say fine. I wanted to keep the mask on, keep pretending I had everything under control. But then my eyes caught the notebook sitting on the table. The word evidence stared back at me in my own handwriting. "I've been hungry," I said instead, "and scared. And I've been writing things down, just in case." "Just in case what?" he asked quietly. "Just in case something happens to me," I replied, my voice barely audible. "So nobody can say they did not know." Silence filled every inch of space between us. For a moment, I hated that silence. But then I realized he was not ignoring it. He was actually feeling it, letting it sink in. He leaned forward in his chair. "Sydney, leaving an 11-year-old alone for a week, for a month, with almost no food and no supervision, that is not just irresponsible. It is dangerous. It is neglect. There are laws about this." My heart thudded so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. Neglect. Laws, words that sounded like they belonged on TV dramas, not in my actual kitchen. "What happens if someone finds out?" I asked, my voice suddenly small and shaky. "Agencies get involved," he said carefully. "Child Protective Services. There would be an investigation. Your parents could face serious consequences." There it was. The thing I had not let myself say out loud. The thing that made my anger twist into something sharper, something with edges. "Consequences," I repeated slowly. "For what they did to me." He did not rush to comfort me or tell me I was overreacting or being dramatic. Instead, he just nodded. "For what they did to you." My mind started racing. I imagined my mom's face when she came home to find strangers in our living room. People asking questions she could not dodge with a fake smile and some joke about independence. I pictured her seeing my notebook, my video recordings, the empty pantry she left behind. "Do you want help, Sydney?" Mr. Hughes asked quietly, real help, not just groceries. The kind of help that makes sure this never happens again. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no, to slam the door on all of this and just wait for my parents to come back so we could all pretend this month never happened. But another part of me, the part that had been writing the word evidence in big letters, was tired of pretending anything. "Yes," I said finally. "But if I say yes, what does that mean for them?" "It means they will have to answer for their choices." He said, "It means adults will finally see what you've been going through." I looked down at my hands, then back up at him. "Then help me," I said. "I want them to see exactly what they did. I want them to feel what it is like to lose control." He nodded once, firm and certain. "First we make sure you are safe. Then we make sure the right people hear your story." As he reached for his phone, a strange calm settled over me. The fear was still there, sitting in my chest like a stone. But underneath it was something new. A quiet, steady determination. I was not just some kid waiting to be rescued anymore. I was the witness. If you were in my place, would you keep protecting your parents? Or would you finally let the truth become the weapon they never saw coming? Mr. Hughes stepped into the hallway to make his phone call, leaving me alone at the table with my notebook open in front of me. I could hear pieces of his voice, low and controlled, but the words that drifted back to me were enough to make my pulse race. Alone, 11 years old. No guardian, no food in the house. I traced the ink on the page with my fingertip. Evidence. Suddenly, it did not feel like a secret diary anymore. It felt like proof. A few minutes later, he came back into the kitchen. "I called your neighbor, Mrs. Johnson," he said, "and I also spoke with someone from the Child Protection Hotline. They are going to send someone to check on you. But first, we need to get you something to eat." My cheeks burned hot at the idea of people checking on me like I was some kind of broken thing that needed fixing. But I also felt something else. Stirring inside, a small flare of satisfaction. If they were checking on me, that meant they were also checking on my parents. "Is Mrs. Johnson mad at me?" I asked. He shook his head quickly. "No, she's worried. That is what good neighbors do when they care." A knock sounded at the door. Softer than his earlier one had been, Mrs. Johnson stepped inside and her eyes immediately scanned me from head to toe. Landing on the notebook, the empty cereal box still sitting on the counter, the pale exhausted look on my face. "Oh, Sydney," she breathed out. "Why did you not come to me sooner?" Because I did not want to look weak, I blurted out before I could stop myself. They always tell me I am mature, that I can handle things on my own. I thought asking for help meant I was proving them wrong. Her expression softened in a way that made my throat tight. "Asking for help is not weakness," she said gently. "It is survival. And sometimes it is the only way to make adults face what they do." That last sentence hit me like a bell ringing clear. Make adults face what they do. We all sat down together, and for the first time I did not feel like a kid being talked over or ignored. They asked me to tell them everything, and I did. I told them about the suitcase rolling out the front door, the $20, the card that never worked, the way my mom laughed when I asked who would be staying with me. "You will be fine," she had said like it was a compliment. "You are my little adult." As I talked, Mrs. Johnson's jaw clenched tighter. And tighter, Mr. Hughes scribbled notes on a pad he had pulled from his bag. "Can we show them this?" I asked, pointing to my notebook. "When they come, the people from the hotline." "Yes," he said firmly. "In fact, I want you to keep writing. What you felt, what you ate, when you tried to call them. Everything you remember. So they cannot twist it later," I murmured. "So they cannot say I'm exaggerating or being dramatic." "Exactly." He replied, "You are allowed to protect yourself with the truth." The phrase made my chest tighten. Protect myself with the truth. That sounded a lot like revenge, and I realized I did not hate that feeling at all. Later, when the caseworker arrived, she introduced herself in a calm professional voice and asked to look around the house. I watched her eyes linger on the nearly empty fridge, the trash can with only a few wrappers inside, the unused emergency credit card still sitting on the counter where my mom had tossed it. She did not have to say anything out loud. Her expression said everything. "How long have your parents been gone?" She asked gently. 7 days, I answered. "They plan to be gone a month." "And who checks on you?" "No one," I said. "Not until today." "Do they call you?" "Not since the airport," I said quietly. She sent one selfie from Paris with a heart emoji. That was it. The caseworker nodded slowly, then turned to Mr. Hughes and Mrs. Johnson and started talking to them in low voices. I slipped away for a second and set up my phone on the counter, opening the video app again with shaking hands. I recorded a quiet clip of the empty fridge, the lonely table, the caseworker's bag resting on the chair. "This is what our house looked like when they finally noticed I was alone," I said into the camera. "This is what my mom will walk into when she comes back." "When?" I finished. I tucked my phone into my pocket, the recording saved safely. I was not just surviving anymore. I was documenting everything. The caseworker came back to me. "For now, you will not be alone again," she said. "We are arranging for you to stay with Mrs. Johnson while we speak to your parents and figure out the next steps." I glanced at my neighbor. She smiled softly and squeezed my shoulder with a warm hand. "Is that okay with you, Sydney?" The caseworker asked. I thought about my empty house, the long quiet nights, the way my mom's last message had been about croissants and sightseeing instead of asking if I was okay. Then I thought about something else. What it would do to my parents when they came home and found not just a lonely, hungry kid, but an official report waiting for them with my name on it. "Yes," I said. "I want to stay somewhere I am not invisible." That night, as I packed a small bag of clothes and my notebook, I looked around my room one more time. The posters on my wall, the stuffed animal on my bed, the window that faced the street where I had watched other families living normal lives. "This was the place you left," I whispered under my breath, imagining my mom hearing those words later. "But it is not the place you will find when you come back. If you were me, would you choose to forgive and forget? Or would you let every empty shelf and unanswered call become proof that could change everything? Moving next door should have felt like nothing. Just a few steps across a patch of grass. But carrying my small bag and my notebook into Mrs. Johnson's house felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. I was not just the kid stuck in the middle anymore. I was the kid someone had actually chosen to protect. Her house smelled like fresh laundry and vanilla candles. The table was set with real placemats and her fridge was full of actual food. not just forgotten leftovers clinging to the corners of empty shelves. My stomach growled before I could stop it. We will fix that. First, she said, pretending not to notice my embarrassment. Come on, let's cook together. We walked back to my kitchen with reusable bags in hand. This time she did not just grab food at random. She let me choose what I wanted. Pasta, sauce, vegetables, bread, fruit. Things that would actually last. Things that made the kitchen look like someone lived there and cared. Keep the receipts, Mr. Hughes said quietly as we unloaded the bags onto the counter. They show what was not here before today. So we tucked the receipts into my notebook behind. The pages where I'd written about being hungry. Evidence, layer by layer. As we cooked together, the sound of boiling water and sizzling garlic wrapped around me like something I'd been missing without even knowing it. Have you ever made spaghetti from scratch like this? Mrs. Johnson asked. Not really, I admitted. My mom mostly microwaves stuff or we order takeout. Then today you learned something new, she said with a warm smile. You learn how to feed yourself properly. Nobody can ever take that away from you. I stirred the red sauce, watching it swirl around the pan. It felt symbolic somehow, like all the anger and hurt inside me was finally going somewhere useful, turning into something I could actually use. While we waited for the pasta to finish, the caseworker came back with more questions. She asked for my mom's messages, the time of her flight, the last time she actually called to check on me. I showed her the one selfie with the Eiffel Tower in the background and the caption that read finally free for a month. Free from what? The caseworker asked, looking up at me. I stared at the screen. From me, I guess? She wrote something down. In her notes, I did not ask what it was. I did not need to know. Do you want to say anything directly to your parents? She asked. We sometimes include statements from kids in our official reports. For a second, my throat closed up completely. Then I felt my notebook pressing against my arm where I held it close, and my answer came out clear and steady. Yes, I said. I want them to know exactly what this felt like. We sat at the table and I wrote while the spaghetti cooked in the background. You said I was mature enough to be alone, I wrote carefully. But being mature does not mean I do not need food. It does not mean I do not get scared at night. You told everyone how hard you work and how much you sacrifice, but you did not notice when your own kid was counting crumbs just to make it through another day. I stopped, took a deep breath, and kept going. By the time you read this, other adults will have already seen what you did. They will have seen the empty fridge, the dead card, the notebook where I had to record my own neglect just to prove it was real. If there are consequences for you, they are not because I betrayed you. They are because you left me behind. When I finished writing, I slid the paper toward the caseworker. Can you make sure they see this? I can, she said firmly. And I will. Later that evening, I sat at Mrs. Johnson's table, twirling spaghetti around my fork. The first bite almost made me cry. It was warm and real and tasted like something I had not felt in what seemed like forever. Safety. This is what normal is supposed to feel like, I thought. Not sitting alone on the floor eating dry cereal straight out of a box in the dark. Mr. Hughes stayed for dinner and we talked about school and books, and even silly things like the worst cafeteria lunches any of us had ever eaten. For 1 hour, I almost forgot that my life was technically falling apart in the house right next door. But when the plates were cleared and the grown-ups started talking quietly in the living room, I heard pieces of their conversation drifting back. Words like temporary placement, investigation, and possible removal of custody. I did not fully understand every legal term they used, but I understood the feeling underneath all of them. My parents had treated my existence like a vacation from responsibility. Now there was a real chance they could lose the right to call themselves my guardians at all. Back in the guest room where I would be sleeping, I set up my phone one more time and hit record. Day 7, I said softly into the camera, but it is different now. I am not in my house anymore. I am somewhere safe. People know the truth. They saw everything. I looked straight at my own reflection in the screen. If you are my mom watching this, I want you to remember something, I continued. You always said actions have consequences. That if I messed up, I would have to face them. This time it is your turn. This is not just my story anymore. It is your choice. Written down in real time. I stopped the recording and lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. My heart was not light. It hurt. I still missed the idea of parents who would have stayed, who would have cared enough not to leave. But I also knew something else now, something important. I was not powerless anymore. Maybe one act of kindness from a neighbor really could change everything. But would it be enough to fix a lifetime of being second place to work trips and vacations? Or would it simply give me the strength to walk away from them for good when the time finally came? The days at Mrs. Johnson's house felt unreal at first, like I'd accidentally stepped into someone else's family. I woke up to the smell of breakfast cooking instead of the sound of my own stomach growling in an empty house. There was always someone asking how I slept, not just assuming I was fine on my own. For the first time in what felt like forever, I did not have to prove I was independent every single second just to be tolerated. But even with all the warmth and care, there was a countdown ticking in the background. Every adult around me knew. I knew it too. At some point, my parents would have to come back. At some point, they would have to walk into everything they had left behind. On the second night, my phone buzzed while I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Number I recognized flashed across the screen. My mom's work phone. I stared at it until the screen started to dim. "Aren't you going to answer?" Mrs. Johnson asked gently from across the room. My fingers trembled as I reached for the phone. What if she is just calling to yell at me for ruining her trip? "Then you will know exactly where you stand," she said calmly. "But you do not have to talk to her alone." I hit accept and put the phone on speaker. "Sydney?" Her voice snapped through the line, sharp and impatient, not worried at all. "What is going on? Why is there some woman from Child Services emailing me? About an investigation? Why is your school involved? Do you have any idea what this looks like for me right now?" There it was. Not "Are you okay?" Not "Are you safe?" Just what this looks like for me. I swallowed hard. "They are involved because you left me," I said, my voice shaking but getting the words out. "You went to Europe for a month. You left me alone with $20 and a credit card that did not work. They saw the house. They saw the fridge. They saw everything." "You are exaggerating," she shot back instantly. "There was plenty of food. You know how dramatic you can be sometimes. And you are 11, not a toddler. I cannot believe you would turn people against us like this. Do you understand what you are doing to our reputation?" Across the table, I saw Mrs. Johnson's jaw tighten. She leaned closer so her voice would carry through the speaker. "This is Mrs. Johnson. I'm the neighbor. I'm also the one who bought your daughter groceries because there was almost nothing left in your house. This is not about your reputation. It is about her safety." There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. "Why are you interfering? This is a private family matter. Sydney is fine." I glanced at the notebook sitting next to me, open to a page where I had written "no call" for 7 days in my own handwriting. "No," I said quietly, cutting in before anyone else could speak. "I was not fine. I'm not fine with what you did to me." There was a pause. For a split second, I thought maybe she would finally actually hear me. Then she spoke again, each word shoved through what sounded like clenched teeth. "We will talk about this when we get back. And we are going to have a very serious conversation. About consequences, young lady." The line went dead. Mrs. Johnson reached over and silenced the phone before it could buzz again with another message. "She is right about one thing," she said softly. "There will be consequences. But not just for you." The next day, the caseworker came to the school and pulled me out of class. We sat in a small office that smelled like dry erase markers and old coffee. While she scrolled through something on her tablet. "Your parents have moved their flight up," she told me. "They will be home in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. My heart flipped over. Part of me felt relieved they were not staying gone for the full month after all. But another part of me recognized the real reason they were coming back early. They were not coming back for me. They were coming back to protect themselves. What happens when they get here?" I asked. "We will meet them at the house," she said. "I will be there along with a supervisor from the department. Mr. Hughes has agreed to attend as a school representative. We want you to be part of the conversation if you feel safe enough." I thought about hiding at Mrs. Johnson's house and letting all the adults handle everything. I thought about slipping into my room and pretending I was asleep when they walked through the door. Both options felt like going back to being invisible. "No," I said slowly, "I want to be there. I want them to see me. I want them to see what they came home to." The caseworker nodded with approval. "Then we will make sure you have a voice in that." room. For the next 2 days, we prepared without calling it preparation. We did not rehearse lines like actors in a school play, but we organized facts. The caseworker printed copies of my written statement, the notes from my notebook she had permission to use, the receipts from the groceries, screenshots of my mom's posts from Europe showing her having fun, the call logs that showed how many times she had not bothered to check in on me. This is not about punishing them just for the sake of it, she reminded me carefully. This is about making sure you are safe going forward. Whatever happens comes from their choices, not from your existence. I understood what she meant. But another part of me, the part that remembered eating dry cereal alone in the dark, could not pretend this did not feel like something else too. It felt like justice. It felt like holding up a mirror and forcing them to look. On the morning they were supposed to return, we went back into my house for the first time in days. It still smelled faintly like stale air and accumulated dust. My stomach twisted into knots, but I forced myself to walk through each room slowly. This was my scene. I could not look away from it now. The caseworker placed a thick folder on the kitchen table. Beside it, we put my notebook open to the first page that said evidence. In big letters. My phone sat next to it, turned on and ready. The first video I had recorded, the one where I said day 3, I am still alone, was paused on the screen. The image of my own tired, scared face stared back at me from days ago. Are you sure you want this playing when they arrive? She asked. Yes, I said firmly. She always tells me stories do not matter unless there's proof. This is my proof. Mrs. Johnson stood by the doorway with her arms crossed, but her eyes kind and supportive. Mr. Hughes leaned against the counter, with his school badge clipped neatly to his shirt, watching everything with quiet focus. The supervisor from the department sat at the table, flipping through the file one more time, making sure everything was in order. We heard the car before we actually saw it. Tires crunching on the driveway. Doors slamming shut. Muffled laughter floating through the walls. For a moment, my legs felt like they were made of rubber. The caseworker stepped closer to me. Remember, she said quietly, you do not have to protect them from the truth anymore. If they try to make you feel guilty, you can look at me or at Mrs. Johnson or at Mr. Hughes. You are not alone in this room. I nodded, taking a steadying breath that did not quite steady anything. The front door handle turned. The lock clicked open. This was it. The exact moment everything split into before and after. If you were standing where I was right then, would you run to hug them and pretend nothing happened? Or would you hold your ground and let them finally face what they had done? The door swung open and my mom walked in first, dragging her suitcase behind her exactly like she had when she left a week ago. She was still wearing a stylish trench coat and sunglasses, pushed up on top of her head like the airport was just another fashion runway. My dad followed right behind her, juggling bags and talking about something on his phone, his voice light and easy like the world owed him a smooth landing. They both stopped dead when they saw all of us standing there. The laughter died on my dad's lips instantly. My mom's smile froze halfway across her face. Her eyes jumped from the stranger sitting at the table to Mr. Hughes by the counter to Mrs. Johnson near the door and finally landed on me standing next, to the open notebook. And the glowing phone screen. What is this? She demanded, dropping her suitcase handle with a thud. What are all of you doing in my kitchen right now? The supervisor rose calmly from her chair. Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, my name is Ms. Lopez from Child Protective Services. Please have a seat. We need to discuss the situation regarding your daughter Sydney. My mom did not sit down. She stared directly at me instead, her eyes hard and accusing. Sydney, what did you tell them? For a second, that old instinct kicked in hard. The one that made me want to shrink down, apologize for existing, twist the story around to make her less angry with me. But then the video on my phone caught my eye. That smaller, exhausted version of me from day 3 staring back. I lifted my chin up. I told them what happened, I said clearly. I told them the truth about everything. My dad tried to smooth things over the way he always did. He set his bags down and forced out a laugh that sounded fake even to me. There has clearly been some kind of misunderstanding here, he said. We left her with food, with money, with a credit card for emergencies. She's a very mature 11-year-old. She knows how to take care of herself. Kids these days are way more capable than people think they are. The supervisor placed a printed sheet on the table and turned it toward them so they could see it clearly. "This is the activation record for your credit card," she said in an even tone. It was never set up with a PIN code. It was declined multiple times when Sydney tried to use it for food. She tapped another page firmly. "These are photos taken of your refrigerator and pantry 1 week into your trip. The amount of food present was not sufficient for an unsupervised minor, and several items had already expired before you even left." My mom finally sat down, more from shock than actual cooperation. Expired food does not mean she was starving. She snapped defensively. "We were only gone a week so far at that point. We checked in on her." The supervisor slid another paper forward across the table. "These are your call and message logs," she said. "One photo from the airport, one selfie from Paris, no direct check-ins. No calls asking if she had eaten anything, if she was safe, if anyone was staying with her." My dad's face went pale. He glanced down at the logs, then looked over at me standing there. "We continue 047 told you to order food, Sydney," he said weakly. "We trusted you to handle things." "You trusted me to survive," I said quietly. "You did not trust yourselves to actually be parents." Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, unable to hold back anymore. "She was dizzy from hunger when we found her," she said firmly. "She told me she did not come to me for help because she did not want to disappoint you by needing anything. Do you have any idea what kind of lesson that teaches a child?" My mom looked. Between all of us, her eyes narrowing defensively. "This is getting blown completely out of proportion," she said. "Maybe she was being a little dramatic with her notes and videos. She likes to write stories. She has a big imagination." The supervisor nodded once at me, then gestured toward my phone. "Sydney, are you comfortable showing them what you recorded?" My hand shook slightly as I reached for the phone. I tapped play. With trembling fingers. The room filled with my own small voice from days earlier. Day 3, the past version of me said on the screen, "I'm still alone. The card does not work at all. I ate the last decent thing in the fridge yesterday." If you are seeing this recording, it means someone finally asked what happened to me. The camera panned slowly across our kitchen, catching the nearly empty shelves, the lonely box of cereal, the silent room with nobody in it but me. My mom slapped a hand over her mouth. My dad just stared at the screen, his shoulders sinking. Lower and lower. "No," my mom whispered, stepping back like the images were physically pushing her away. "No, this cannot be happening right now." But it was happening. And this time, she could not scroll past it or laugh it off or make excuses. The supervisor folded her hands on the table. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, based on our investigation, school reports, neighbor testimony, and Sydney's own documentation, we have determined that leaving her unsupervised under these conditions qualifies as neglect under state law. Effective immediately, there will be an emergency order in place. Sydney will not be returning to unsupervised care with either of you until a full hearing is conducted by the court." My mom shook her head violently. "You cannot take my child from me over a misunderstanding," she said, her voice rising. "We just needed a break from everything. Do you know how hard we work? Do you know what kind of stress we are under constantly?" I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I know," I said. "You tell everyone how hard you work. You tell your friends, your coworkers, your social media followers. But when I was alone and hungry and scared, you did not tell anyone about that part. You did not tell anyone where I actually was or what I was going through." Her eyes filled with tears suddenly. "Sydney, you do not understand," she said desperately. "Adults need time away too. We thought you would be perfectly fine. We did not mean to hurt you at all." The words I had heard my whole life echoed in my head. Every single time I forgot a chore, every time I made a mistake, she would say them with cold finality. "Actions have consequences, Sydney," so I said them right back to her. "You always told me that actions have consequences," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "You taught me that if I made a choice, I had to live with what came next. This is what you taught me. This is what your choice looks like when you face it." The room went completely quiet. My mom looked like the ground had vanished beneath her feet. My dad gripped the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The supervisor spoke again in that same calm, professional tone. "You will have the opportunity to participate in parenting classes. psychological evaluations, and supervised visits if the court approves them, she said. This is not about punishing you forever. It is about ensuring that Sydney is safe and that this kind of situation never happens again. My mom turned back to me, tears spilling down her face now. Sydney, please, she begged. Tell them you want to come home. Tell them we can fix this. We can start over fresh. We can be so much better. I wanted to say yes. A part of me, the part that still remembered bedtime stories and holiday decorations, wanted to rewind everything and pretend none of this ever happened. But another part of me, the part that had spent nights recording videos alone in the dark, knew that going back without real change would mean saying none of what I went through mattered at all. I want to be safe, I said. I want to be somewhere I am actually seen before I disappear completely. Right now, that place is not with you. Her face crumpled like paper being crushed. My dad looked away, blinking rapidly and trying not to cry. The supervisor placed an official form on the table. For the duration of the investigation, Sydney will remain in temporary placement with Mrs. Johnson, she said. You'll be notified of the court date. Until then, you are not to contact her directly without going through our office first. You are taking her side over her own parents, my mom whispered brokenly. No, I said softly but firmly. They are finally taking my side. For once in my life. We left the house before they did. As I stepped out onto the porch, I could hear my mom sobbing inside. My dad trying to soothe her with words that sounded hollow and weak even from a distance. Walking back across the grass to Mrs. Johnson's house, I felt both heavy and strangely light at the same time. I had not ruined my family. They had done that themselves when they chose a month of freedom over a kid who still counted on them to come home every single night. All I had done was refuse to hide it anymore. Weeks later at the official hearing, I sat in a room that smelled like paper and old carpet while lawyers talked about risk factors and protective environments and language I barely understood. My parents looked smaller than I remembered them, sitting at their table across the room, listening as people described their choices like evidence in a criminal case. My videos were entered into the official record. My notebook pages were scanned and submitted. My own voice on the witness stand did not shake as much as I thought it would when I answered questions. In the end, the judge ordered supervised visits and mandatory counseling for both of them. Full custody stayed out of their reach for now. They did not go to jail. It was not some dramatic movie moment with handcuffs and shouting, but it was something more real and in a way even sharper. They lost the automatic right to be in my life without someone watching them. They lost the assumption that they were the good guys in this story. That summer, I learned how to cook way more than just spaghetti. I learned that asking for help was not weakness and that telling the truth could be the strongest kind of revenge. There is not yelling, not breaking things, not being cruel, but simply refusing to let what happened stay invisible and buried. My mom still sends messages sometimes. Long paragraphs about how much she claims she has changed. How sorry she says she is, how desperately she wants things to go back to normal. Maybe someday we will find a version of normal that does not erase what actually happened. Maybe we will not. But I know this much for certain. The day she came home from Europe expecting to find a month's worth of stories and souvenirs, she walked into something she never saw coming. A daughter who had turned every empty shelf, every unanswered call, every hungry night into documented proof, a room full of adults who finally listened instead of dismissed. A truth she could not talk her way out of no matter how hard she tried. And when she whispered those words, "No, this cannot be happening," I realized something important and powerful. It already had happened. It had been happening from the exact moment she chose a plane ticket and a vacation over me. So tell me honestly, if you were 11 years old and left completely alone with $20 while your parents chased their own freedom halfway around the world, would you bury the story to keep their image clean and perfect? Or would you do exactly what I did and let the truth become the revenge they never expected to face?